Today I'm here with the mayor of West Hollywood, Chelsea Byers. So thankful to get to chat with you today.
Certainly. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I wanted to start by talking about the lawsuit that West Hollywood has just joined. First off, congratulations and thank you. For our viewers and readers, I wanted to ask you, in kind of layman's terms, what does the lawsuit against ICE entail? And if it succeeds, what would actually materially change for immigrants and undocumented individuals in Los Angeles County?
Yeah. So the lawsuit really sought to accomplish two things. First, it was about prohibiting the ICE immigration agents from just stopping people for seemingly no reason. We know that these immigration raids should be conducted with a warrant for a specific individual's request. But what instead has been happening is largely discrimination based on the color of people's skins, what they look like, where they may be, and the assumption that because they look a certain way or are in certain places or conducting specific behaviors, they are an illegal, unlawful immigrant in this country. And that has been requested to stop. The other issue is that people who are detained have not been given access to their lawyers, and that has been stopped. So the lawsuit really seeks to prohibit two specific actions from happening that have been happening at a very large and unreasonable scale since the time these raids began at the beginning of June.
Call them out. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's so incredible. I'm really glad, to see our city and many others, joining in on this lawsuit to put them in their place, because what they are doing is unlawful and wrong.
That's right.
I guess I'm also curious how this lawsuit seeks to expand West Hollywood's role as a sanctuary for not only LGBTQ plus folks, but for immigrants as well. And why, I guess I'm curious your take as to why immigrant justice is a queer issue. And I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the fact that the city has been a sanctuary city since the time of our founding, a place that has taken a stance and a commitment in saying that we are only going to do right by our immigrant community members. We are not going to conform with laws, and especially this illegal behavior that the federal government is taking part in, that we are not going to take part in that, and we can draw a line in the sand. For me, having our city join this lawsuit was another act of declaration of those values, that we are willing to put ourselves, our city, our values, and frankly, our public dollars and resources on the line on behalf of our immigrant community. This takes a lot of time for the city to participate in an action like this. I imagine it's partly why other cities couldn't make the decision to join, because it does cost us resources, time, public dollars to invest in this. But that's what being a sanctuary city means to us, that we are going to invest those resources in for the benefit of our immigrant community and neighbors. And it's so important. And for me, this is a queer issue because we're challenging the status quo. We're challenging the predominant norm of our times, which is that there hasn't been comprehensive immigration reform on the books in this country, and people have needed a pathway to lawful citizenship. They've needed a pathway to gain access to communities where resources exist, where their lives can be made materially different. And for me, queer issues are about resilience, are about fighting for people of all backgrounds. And more specifically, we know that queer people are often ones who are fleeing their homes from oppressive countries, coming to the United States of America, where they're told that they can be free to live and be whoever they are. And so this is, in fact, a very queer issue. And we see that through the real world example of Andre Romero, who was a gay makeup artist who was in this country, who was detained and sent back to Venezuela, El Salvador, all these different awful conditions. And to this day, while he has been released, we still don't know where he is. And so for so many reasons, we have the real examples of why queer immigrants come to this country fleeing harmful conditions, their own family or oppressive governments, whatever it may be, and come to this country for a life of better, and are not able to get that because of what's happening here now.
Exactly. I could not have said that better myself. You know, immigrants' rights are queer rights, queer rights are immigrant rights, right?
All the same. Yeah.
There are one and the same. And I think it's so important to, you know, when we call ourselves, you know, protectors or, you know, defenders of human rights, feminists, you know, it has to be intersectional. That is absolutely mandatory.
When we talk about the role, especially of trans people in having documentation to support who they are, and then we talk about what it means to be an undocumented immigrant, the intersection between these two issues, who is creating the authorization for a person to be who they are and then have to have a paper that agrees with it? It is just so maddening right now that this is the times we live in. And so I'm hopeful because I believe the opportunity for solidarity is clearer than ever. But we have to enact it. We have to engage it. And we have to get people thinking in those ways. So these aren't two separate issues, but as we said, it's all one and the same.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, as a trans Latina woman, right? Like I see this in my communities every single day. And it is so important to highlight, you know, that the federal government is very strategically targeting our legal documents as trans people in order to, you know, attack our citizenship. You know, they're not just attacking immigrants, which obviously we are focusing on today, but they are actually attacking our citizens and deporting citizens as well now, which is alarming. I want to ask you what steps the city is taking to ensure that all departments, such as especially law enforcement, but also housing, health, and emergency services, all follow through on sanctuary commitments. You know, in other words, not cooperating with ICE and, you know, these, you know, really unlawful guidances that the federal government is trying to give us. And I like following along with that, how can other local governments actively resist federal immigration enforcement?
Yeah, for us as a city, so much of this work has already been happening, which I think is a huge part of what makes us effective. We didn't wait to this moment of the Trump administration or the first one to respond. A lot of this had been in place already, and I think that's really essential. For us, being a sanctuary city means that we have made sure that people know their rights, that our housing is absolutely not discriminating people. Housing is so key and fundamental. We actually just expanded non-discrimination in the city as well, so that polyamorous, non-nuclear family models are also supported. And so we are expanding the ways that queer people especially are being able to be safe in our housing and our work here in the city of West Hollywood. And then we took immediate action after the first raid happened in the city July 4th. One of our beloved car washes was raided. We took action at the next city council meeting to expand our social service programs, so food delivery, immigration, legal support, and make sure that we have additional housing resources for those who've been impacted directly in our city or just beyond its borders. So we took steps to expand that. And you may remember in February of this year, there was a moment that happened in the Rainbow District. These fake ICE signs went up. There was communications put out, the phone number, the logo. It caused a lot of fear and panic right away because it seemed like people were trying to encourage people to report others by utilizing the ICE hotline. There was a lot of confusion. It was clear that these were homemade signs, but who would go to such lengths to try to encourage a WeHo to, you know, call ICE and report immigrants to this hotline? It was despicable. And I think that moment in February, 4 months before these immigration raids began occurring in LA County, gave us as a community a moment to consider how we would individually respond. And what I saw immediately was this fierceness in caring for each other, this immediate line of defense that we will not be calling this immigration hotline. We are not going to be doing that to our neighbors. In fact, we're going to make sure that we have response in place. So if ICE shows up, we know how we're going to show up and care for each other. We know how we're going to notify each other, get the word out on social media. And people have been so quick to respond in that positive way. So I think in that way too, it's beyond the city. It's the community. It's all of these organizations that have been saying, what can we do? How do we help each other? And we know that these times are not short-lived. We are in it. We are only at less than 200 days into this administration. And so we're really trying to figure out a roadmap for ourselves as individuals, as a community, and as cities. And as you said, West Hollywood is this leader in the region in so many ways, but we need other cities to step up. If we couldn't do that lawsuit ourselves. It took the city of LA, the county of Los Angeles, 9 other cities have signed on now. So I'm hopeful that we'll see more cities find their pathway to action, knowing that immigrant neighbors, our community, we are all here. We depend on each other. We rely on each other. Our cities would not be the same without immigrants. And we cannot wait to see what that looks like. We have to know that and believe it and fight for it now.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, that camaraderie is really powerful, right? Because together we are so much more powerful than when we, stand alone. So that is such a beautiful response. How West Hollywood collaborates with community organizations and legal advocates and immigration leaders to support undocumented queer folks specifically, and what models of support and safety are currently in place and working.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we've taken a lot of leadership from the community. We don't pretend as a city to have all the answers, and in so many ways rely on community to come to us and say that this is actually where the city needs to invest its resources. There's 33 at least organizations that we support through our social service programs. And I know that this year uniquely, we've been working with Chirla, the Trans Latina Coalition, hearing from these organizations and responding to what types of support they need, even just elevating that they are the ones to look to and be in dialogue with, so that they have that credibility and that platform and that reach to community is so important. So I think we've been making sure that the spotlight is on those sort of folks. Early on this year, there was actually a panel done about the role that the legal field needs to play in being the frontline defense for Trump. And I think there's a lot of frustration that the community feels because we can't all pack into those courtrooms. We don't get to be all there watching the judge bang her gavel and say that this is what justice looks like. So we're, trying to figure out what it means for the community to feel like they're a part of these moments when justice is happening inside the courtrooms. And I encourage people to remember that supporting those organizations, even if it's just a small monetary contribution each month, amplifying their things on social media, all of that goes such a big way, because we have to make sure people know that those resources are there, that they're credible in a world where everyone's trying to discount and, discredit each other, that these are credible organizations that we can trust and that need our support. So that feels so important for us as a city to make sure that we're doing. And we know what works are the things that people are asking for. It's just the space to care for each other, to feed each other, to make sure people are housed. That's what public safety really looks like for people. It's being in communication and knowing that they have those trusted communication tools and resources available. People are asking for really unique things in this moment that are also not extraordinary, right? It's taking care of each other in these very simple ways. That's what public safety looks like right now.
I'm so glad that you highlighted the Trans Latina Coalition and Chirla. They're both, such important organizations doing the work on the ground every day.
Yes.
Huge shout out to Bambi Salcedo. Gracias por todo, because we need it. I love to hear that, the way that you're highlighting and supporting them. What responsibility do cities like West Hollywood have, especially when standing up to unjust federal policies and guidance?
Yeah, it's interesting question, because part of it is like recognizing that there's a line. The federal government is going to do what it wants to do. In a lot of cases, we're seeing the worst manifestations of that right now. But local cities absolutely have a voice and play a very unique role, because there are more cities than there is a federal government. There are more of us than there are them. I think we can really speak directly to the voices of the people in our communities and uplift those voices. It's the federal government isn't in the grocery store in its local community with everyone, but mayors, city council members, we are, right? Like, this local government is right here. We're all in each other's faces. And I think with that comes a level of directness that we can really communicate to our federal government. And I feel that power when I'm in DC, anytime, anyways, but especially now when I'm feeling so much conviction from my community about this issue. It makes it so easy, honestly, to show up and be loud. Like, my community is demanding these raids stop. They know they're destructive. They're harming families. They're harming our neighborhoods. we have to make this stop. It's a very clear moment. I also really feel the power when I look to agencies or organizations like the National League of Cities or the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which has taken a really bold stance. It's an organization that has people from different lanes of government, of different politics, Democrats, Republicans, people who don't identify with any party. And we're all coming together and saying what matters most to our local communities. And right now, it's that these ICE raids stop. And I think there's something so powerful about a multi-partisan organization that's just showing up for local elected officials and what our communities need, saying that we have to stop these ICE raids. It's very powerful. And while I'm frustrated that action hasn't been taken more swiftly, when you see a lawsuit like we started this conversation talking about, you really feel the power of us all coming together, taking collective action, and the impact of it.
Wow. I love to hear that so much. You are powerful and you are a leader, and we appreciate you so much for everything you're doing. I just have to voice that, because I feel you. Sometimes it can become easy when these headlines and these negative voices are so loud, always constantly in our ears. And so I think it's important to remind ourselves of our power, and when we come together like that, it is so beautiful to witness.
Really, yeah.
For those who are not directly impacted by ICE or immigration enforcement, including myself, I may be Latina, I may be trans, but I, am a citizen. I have, a updated correct passport with my gender marker on it. I, am such in a place of privilege, inside of my community, as are you, as elected official with power. So I'm curious your thoughts about why it's so important for us to speak out and take action, and more importantly, what does true solidarity look like, and how can individuals get involved?
Yeah, I think it's so important that we see what's happening to the immigrant community as an attack on all of us. This is about tearing our communities apart, and it's being done in some ways under the vein of public safety. This isn't keeping me safe, even if that's how it's being messaged, to keep, white Americans safe. I don't feel like this is keeping me safe, and it's my responsibility as someone whose name this is being done in support of to declare that and to say that very loudly and firmly. We know that this is causing harm in our communities, even just by the distraction of local resources. That alone is causing us harm on an individual basis. If we can't feel the sense of connection to each other, then at least we can understand how city budgets work and how government budgets work, and that so many of these resources are being redirected to extremely regressive, harmful ways that don't support us. It's not about healthcare. It's not about feeding people. It's not about housing people or cleaning our streets. It's really about causing people long-term harm as we're devastating communities. And that economic harm will impact us all. And so there are so many ways that on an individual basis, if you don't care for somebody else, you should care about yourself and understand how this is directly going to harm you. And I feel like it's, an unfortunate message that we have to send, because this president, sold himself the presidency on the idea he was going to make eggs cheaper. And we're already seeing that that's not the case. And I just really wish people would understand that there are direct and personal harms, even if you're the one that's not going to be put in a cage. And it shouldn't take being put into a cage or having your family member or a neighbor for you to start to feel something very deeply personal about what's happening in this moment. And solidarity looks like a lot of different things right now. And being able to voice that this hurts you in some way is a real act of solidarity in the face of a president who's convinced us that this is something that's good for a lot of people.
Wow. Thank you for that clarity.
Yeah.
That is so true, right? Like when the current administration is trying to pass, these big, ugly bills, stripping Medicaid, stripping, all of these important social, services and resources to everyday Americans, especially those that are, struggling the most. And at the same time, pouring, a historic amount, devastating amount towards, immigration
Yeah.
and, attacking immigrants and ICE is just absurd. And it does directly harm all of us. Thank you so much for highlighting that. I think that too many people do not understand or recognize that. So that is such an important point. I'm really glad you brought up. Shifting gears, a little bit more hopeful towards the end here. I want to ask you if you have any sort of message for those that are being targeted today, queer and immigrant folks here in LA specifically and beyond, who are feeling scared or abandoned, by so many different, people in leadership in our government. So what message do you have for them?
Yeah, I say that first, the bravery and the courage that people need to feel to speak up right now. I am just so sorry that it's in such an awful state for folks that you feel like the best thing to do is be silent. And I completely understand that for so many people that is what they have to do to take care of themselves or their family, is to not speak up. And that is why myself and so many others are becoming even louder in this moment, why cities like West Hollywood are investing so much of our resources and time and being on the front lines of this issue, and why I'm so proud to see more and more people grow a consciousness and a voice and a certainty that this is not the future they want to see, and that they are doing extraordinary things and speaking out for that. I love to say and remind people that just, a couple weeks ago, the Los Angeles Labor Federation brought over 1,000 people into a room and trained them on how to take direct action, nonviolent direct action, what it means to put our bodies on the line on behalf of the issues that we care most about. And that is all about immigration right now. And so to have 1,000 more people in LA County prepared and trained and ready to take that level of action tells me people understand that we are in an extraordinary time and that we are all willing to do brave and courageous things in the face of this impossible moment that we're in for a better future. And that gives me so much hope and so much resolve to keep moving forward, even though it feels difficult, because it is my responsibility to do so. And I take so much, hope that when we all feel that responsibility to each other, we'll find a better future. And I see more of that happening every day. So I am really hopeful. As it's very difficult moment we're in, I am actually more hopeful that more people are finding that resolve for themselves and won't let us, move into a worse future than we're in.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for that reminder. I think it is, you really hit the nail on the head there. Like, in order to be fighting and for this movement to be sustainable, we have to, remind ourselves of the hope of, our goals, and that we also have rights. And, we can stand firm in our rights and what we believe in. And there's power in that. My final question is directly related to this. What role does hope and community resilience play in this fight, in this movement? And how can we continue to sustain that, those moments of joy, those moments of hope, in order to keep going? Because obviously we have a long fight ahead of us. And we, there's so many that care so much. So how can we be as sustainable in this?
Yeah, hope for me is believing that it doesn't have to be the way it currently is. It can be something different, and that I have agency and input into what that looks like. And I feel sustained when I'm connecting with others who believe the same thing, and that we start to feel our power together, even just in overpowering the bad feelings that we were just dealing with. And I think there's a lot of sustainability and joy in being in those spaces where you're connecting with others who share an outlook on the future that is more positive and bright than the one we're currently in, and are willing to put energy into making that happen. And I think right now we're in so many moments of uncertainty. It forces us to actually get creative and in some ways have a little bit more fun with imagining what might be possible. And I think there's a lot of joy to be had when you are stepping into creativity and your agency and your voice, and you're reminding yourself that we get to define the future, even as bleak and as dark and as hopeless as it may feel, that it is our responsibility to lean in and to imagine a better future. And when we do so, it makes it all the more possible. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Uh, wow, thank you. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention your cat in the
Oh,
background.
yeah.
I think, being grounded in nature and, having animals and, I see like your yard behind us too.
Uh,
Like, those are things that bring me so much joy. Even just seeing your cat crawl behind you. I had to talk about because it was just so cute. And that brought me some joy in this interview. And, um, wow, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for your leadership, for your power, and for your voice. I fully believe, that we are going to create a better future. And, it starts with steps like this.
That's right. No, I appreciate the space to talk and to invite people into this moment. We can't wait for our leaders to change the world. We really have to be a part of it. And in the city of West Hollywood, everyone truly has a place in being a part of that. I think it's why the city of West Hollywood is such a fabulous place to be. So thank you for having me be a part of this conversation today.